welcome, welcome. We are so excited to have you here today for our Career Coach Workshops, which is an ongoing series that Forte hosts. And for today's Career Coach Workshop, we have the theme of Ted Lasso. So it is Biscuit Bite Leadership Lessons from Ted Lasso. So again, very excited to have everyone here today to kind of take in this content. Diane Fenig, she is the associate partner at Buffkin and Baker. And she is going to lead us through this discussion together and talking about different leadership lessons that you can take back and apply that into your own day-to-day life. So with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Diane to kind of talk more about this.
Why don't you share the poll first? How about that?
Yes,
Let's go with
I
the
can
poll.
definitely do that. Yes. So I'm going to launch a poll. So as you're coming in, please go ahead, answer the question. The question is, are you familiar with the Ted Lasso series? Which is a good place for us to start, just to level set with everybody. So we'll kind of wait a couple moments. Most people are filling this out to let us know. But yeah, definitely let us know. Are you familiar with the Ted Lasso series? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. So I'll share the results just so everybody can kind of see.
There we go. Okay. 70-20. We got about, three-quarters know it. There we go. And then I am going to share my screen. How about that? All right, ladies, gentlemen, if there are any, I'm going to go ahead and start with something that I think you have to kind of frame the whole Ted Lasso series in is the power of consistency. So there's 25% of you that don't really know a little bit about it. This is the Cliff Notes version. This wonderful gentleman in Ted Lasso goes to coach football in England, but football in England looks like soccer. He goes over, brings his assistant coach with, and the whole series begins with, wait a second, football looks different here. And add to the differences, his boss is a woman as the football league owner. All of those things, lots of things, to kind of, walk into that are all very different than most people wouldn't expect. This series came out right after the pandemic hit in 2020, and it was such a feel-good series. And it just really hits on some important lessons we need to pay attention to. But one of the things that kind of you set the stage when you have watched this is you see Ted bringing his boss these biscuits every morning for his way to kind of get to know her. Because great leaders want to know who their team is. And so he used this time every morning to bring her biscuits. Later on in the series, we learn he baked these biscuits, which it just added so much more to it. So it was just really fun and a neat thing to kind of uncover across the series. So the power of consistency, how do you do what you need to do to stay kind of engaged? You'll all be led or we'll be the leaders. And so I hope some of these kind of takeaways from Ted Lasso resonate with you. So I'm going to go through some of them that I think really hit me through the series, and then we can talk and we'll have time for Q&A at the end as always. First of all, everyone is worthy of your attention. I love this the picture, the screenshot, different individuals valuing each other regardless of skin color, gender, intellect, talent, or years. Everyone is worthy of attention. In the series, Nate, who's the ball guy, was asked early on by Ted, the coach, what do you think? And he was so taken back, going, I'm not of the level that you'd ask me what I think. But Ted goes, no, you've been here so long. You know so much more than you're giving yourself credit for. You are worthy of attention. And I just loved when he was called out and asked for his input. Learn people's names. How many of you have a very unique name and people absolutely butcher it every time? My name is Diane. I've been called so many other names. It's so important to learn someone's name, and it's so magical when you hear your own name. and take the time to learn people's name. It's a huge part of leadership. Investing in relationships. No good leader does it on their own. There are always people behind the scenes, on the side of them, above and below, all over the place. But you've got to invest in those relationships because they don't grow and bloom without time and attention on them. And this whole series talked about how did Ted take time to invest in all the different relationships, his boss, his team, his peers. So important about in thinking of how we lead is how we lead other people and not how we only see ourselves in the picture. It's others that we need to invest in. There's lots of rituals in this scene, but great leaders also pay attention to the rituals within organizations. So every organization does some different things to build camaraderie. Some people might do it's fall and everyone's doing football league things, football poll things. Sometimes that's what you do to build camaraderie. I've seen business officers decorate their doors for all the fall holidays as a way to build camaraderie. I never would have expected that group to use this as their ritual. Everyone has one. Be sensitive to what those rituals are and celebrate those. And if they don't have some rituals, how do you create them? Because these things really create a connection between you and your team. It's kind of the secret handshake that you create. Family first, very important to Ted. Kind of keeping that work-life balance, life-work balance. But his family was really, really important to this whole thing. And it is intertwined in the story. I think it's important for us to always remember this. Strong teams. It's important as we're teams together. Sometimes we have to bench players because we have to say, it's not your time. Or there's other people who need to shine first. And how do we as a team learn, unlearn, relearn so that we can really win together? And this stepping back to say, what do we need to do to be better? And everyone assumes that being a strong team is you only have the A team out there. Well, that's not developing anybody else. So it's like, how do you figure out how to play your team and how to develop your team together? That's a really hard one. And learning and unlearning, ooh, those are tough ones. Making others look and feel good because we all listen to praise that we've received. And the praise that we've received helps us know what we should continue to do or discontinue. Just it's so important to pay attention to praise that you've received and what do you do with that? I, I want people to catch people doing the right things, not the wrong things. And when you can praise someone and say, I really appreciate that you always get things done on time, you always honor deadlines, you always do something, that makes you do it even more, which is really what we want is we want people to understand what are the parameters of your work. So I do love when we can help people understand what they're doing well and how we can praise them so we see more of those good behaviors. How do we stay open? How do we stay open to a different idea? How do we look at a problem and turn it on its side and say, huh, I never thought of it that way? How do we stay really humble if someone corrects us and gives us another perspective? And how do we stay open and not get defensive when someone says, that's not how I read that situation? How you handle this openness is really important. Saying, let me noodle on that. Let's come back and have a discussion about it. But this open-mindedness, really, really important for a great team. How do you learn how to play like a child? And I think one of the things in Ted Lasso brought out a lot of the playfulness. Yes, it's a sport. Yes, it's a game. So that kind of fits with what's like a child. But I was telling Alexia I had my grand nieces and nephew this weekend. They're 5, 6, and 7. Seeing the world from a child's perspective, it is so eye-opening. They see things we don't, and they ask questions about things we just assume we know the answer to. And it's just wonderful to sit back and have some fun with something. And the whole thing with leading your team, just bringing out that joyfulness, bringing out that spirit of we're all novices. We've got to be vulnerable. The queen of vulnerability, the one and only Brene Brown. How do you show up and be seen? How do you ask for what you need? How do you talk about how you're feeling? I'm frustrated. And how do you have the hard conversations? And Ted was able to have some very difficult conversations over the series about team players that got a little bit out of line, team players that weren't doing enough, team players that he had to say, we need to kick back and reevaluate how you're doing. Tough conversations are so important. You've all been in work situations where people haven't had them. And it's really hard to be in a work situation where someone's not having the tough conversations because you're not feeling like you're heard if people are not having the tough conversations that you need. How do we lead with empathy? Someone corrected me a long time ago, and I've never forgotten this one. We should not say and should not think I want to try to walk in your shoes because that's not really leading with the empathy we need. It is, how do I walk beside you to best understand how you're perceiving what's happening? A great colleague in human resources wrote a note once saying, leave people better than where you found them. Leading with empathy. Leave people better than where you found them. And I was like, I just really like that. And I think that's a big part of empathy. How do we walk together and try to understand each other's perspective? And in business, we got to learn how to not take it personally. And it's really tough. But so things will happen. And you might walk into work one day and someone says, your job has been eliminated. You are one of the reductions in force. It's hard. It's hard to hear it, but it's not personal. And you've got to say, all right, what do I need to do given this information I've just learned? Optimism is infectious. Oh, goodness. And I think the whole Lasso series has all been about so much optimism, so much positivity. How do we figure out how to laugh at things that are happening? And just always looking for the bright side instead of woe is me and this isn't going to work. How do you look for that positivity throughout, kind of the series and throughout our lives? Humor is really important. Humor has to be tastefully done, though. Humor and bad taste never will work. But someone who can laugh at themselves and laugh at situations instead of getting upset shows that you've got that level of emotional intelligence to say, this is not going to define us. We've got to laugh this off and we've got to work toward our next. Really just so important. And I love that picture of that smile on that little baby. How do we look at growth within teams? Everyone defines growth differently. And I love this picture because what my flower growth might look like might be the one on the very end where it's just popping out of the ground. And I'm celebrating that growth. But someone else is like, no, I'm not going to say I've grown until it's flowering in full bloom. So everyone will define growth differently. That's okay. Just kind of understanding your teammates. Where do they want to grow? How do they want to grow? And asking your teammates, where do you see yourself next within this organization? It's a huge part of growth. Some people want to move to the next step. Others are saying, I love my job. I love this work. I love the people I'm working with. And this kind of fulfills a lot of needs for me, checks a lot of boxes. It's staying in this role the way it is. Not everyone wants to advance to the next level. And then, if you know the series, as they are in the locker room, they all jump up and slap this believe sticker that is handmade on the wall. And just to reinforce that they've got to believe in themselves, they've got to believe in themselves as an individual, they've got to believe in their team as a whole, they've got to believe in the system as a whole. And that belief is kind of core to their success. And again, if you know the series and you see people up there slapping this crazy thing, and when people saw these believe handwritten believe things, they're like, what people would say when they saw someone with that t-shirt on going, I don't understand. And I'm like, this was just who they were. But belief was really an important piece to how they led. Attract what you expect, reflect what you desire, become what you respect, and mirror what you admire. I think Ted Lasso, as the character, would agree that this is really the moral of his story. I always give credit where is due of some things of other leadership lessons that I learned from other places because we none of us do this on our own. And with that, it has been my pleasure. I am going to go back to previous slides. I'm going to go to one of my, there we go. I'm going to stop sharing because you're going to ask me to stop sharing. I am going to go ahead and ask for questions because we always want to give people time to say, wait, what about this? Um, for lessons in leadership. But you will all lead, you will all be followers, and you can use all of these lessons each and every day. So, with that, questions or comments?
Yeah, for sure. So we are opening up for Q&A. So if you have any questions for Diane, or even just love the show and want to kind of put that in the chat, feel free to, or the Q&A section as well. We do have two questions off the top that I want to lift up to the group that hopefully you can answer, Diane. So the first one kind of mentioned that like it seems like Ted does it all when it comes to remembering people in the sense of making them feel like a part of a team. And so kind of tying back to the homemade biscuits idea of like every day he showed up in that routine of like, here are biscuits for my boss. But the person just mentioned like knowing, having seen the show, feeling a little bit overwhelmed about the amount of things that Ted does do and feeling like I can't replicate that, which makes sense because it's a TV show. Um, so given that, they were just wondering if you had any examples of what are other really easy things you could do to kind of create that routine that builds a team like Ted did potentially.
So, I think one of the things, again, that when he started was that time with Rebecca, so that the two of them could really get to know each other. Because he's like, how can I work for a leader and not know who this person is? And again, in the world of sports, it's not usually a female. So it was like there was a lot of reasons for him to really dig deep. But with your own teams, so often people are like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? How do you spend time with your people one on one? And I think it's so important that people understand you've got to see yourself as a team as a whole, but you've also got to see the individuals within the team. So, how do you set up kind of both kinds of meetings? That kind of group meeting where people understand each other and get to know each other deeper. And one of the things I did with the alumni, so the Forte alumni last time, was the operator's manual. How do you get to know what gets under your skin? I want to know you. What's important to you? How do I help you? If you need help, how do I help you? And so that all the teammates kind of know if you want to help Alexia, here's how you help her. But if you want to help me, it'll look different. And some people might like jump in and do something on my behalf. And that might not be the way I want to be helped. I might want to like think through this. When someone wants to propose something to you, some people are verbal people or they want to talk it out. Others are like, put it in writing and then let's talk about it. So everyone has a different style. But building the team, if you do it really strategically, that's going to make a lot of impact. But I think it's also important to do things individually so that you get to know them. And if everybody comes in at different times and you're in an office situation, how do you maybe have a second to, run around the office and have a few minutes with everybody? The problem is that could be the whole day in some cases, because it's like I missed catching up with so and so, and oh my gosh, they're still on my boat. I still need to get them. That's not a really good, efficient way to use your time. So I like scheduling it, that one-on-one time, and the one-on-one things you schedule and commit to doing stay interviews. What's it going to take to keep you here? So those are two activities that the stay interviews are one-on-one. What is it going to take to keep you within our organization? And I love when people say, I really want a stretch assignment. Okay, that's helpful. I don't have one right now, but when you know who wants those things, or when someone says, I don't want to be promoted. I really like the job where I'm at. And I want you to know I'm all in, but I don't want to go to the next step, and I don't want you to hold that against me. Those are the kinds of things you get in the stay interviews because people are having that really candid career conversation. But the other, and if anybody wants the information on stay interviews and or operators manual, connect with me on LinkedIn and say that you want it. I will share the information because I want people to take and use these activities because they're so powerful. But it's got to be that group combination and the individual combination. It can't be both. And one thing every time I say this is one thing that always hits me is when you have a tough conversation with someone. So Alexia and I are working through something and we had a really tough and heated conversation today. When I leave that conversation, I want to leave the door open saying, Alexia, I want you to think about what we talked about today and I want to have some time. Today's Wednesday. Let's chat again next Monday or Tuesday. Let's make sure that we have put this kind of to rest or we've moved this forward. But having a follow up and scheduling that, again, so good for building the team, building the morale, building the trust.
So that actually leads to the next question that
There we
someone
go.
asked. So that was a perfect segue, Diane. We didn't plan
I,
this,
I
but it
didn't do
happened.
that.
So, because the person was asking, they feel like they've built a reputation where their personality might be similar to Ted Lasso as the fun, happy person that's curious and things like that. But they're kind of struggling with that transition, especially from a manager point of view, of having then the hard conversations that don't always fit that stereotype they feel like bucketed into. So they were just asking for advice on like how do you handle that transition of like still keeping morale up, being the hype person, but then being real when you need to be real. So you mentioned like scheduling a follow-up conversation,
And
which I think is a great
no,
thing to
that's
do
to
that.
me that is a huge part of a tough conversation. But if you and I have to have a tough conversation, this is not a drive-by where I knock on your door and say, "Do you have five?" No. If I have to have a tough conversation with you, I need to set an appointment and I need to tell you what the agenda is. That's the only thing that's humane. If I'm putting you on a performance plan, you need to know that. You need to know that going into the meeting. And whenever you're in a situation where you can tell that the meeting is going to be intense, I always tell the person who's kind of the receiver, write notes. Take notes during that. Document what you heard because so often later the words don't match with the words that you wrote. Or the words that you wrote are much more neutral than how you remembered it. So I always tell people if you write it down, it really just kind of helps you stay connected, but then it gives you something to go back to and say, I wrote this down and I underlined this, and I really want to come back and talk to you about that next week. But as the manager and leader, keep that door open for when can we follow back up. But if you just exit and then you're saying, I've spoken and I'm done. And when I'm having a tough conversation, I always lead with, I've had time to rehearse this. You're hearing it for the first time. And I cannot tell you how many people say, that made me feel so much better. Because I'm like, no, because I've rehearsed it. I've thought about this. You're hearing it for the first time, but I want you to be able to come back and say, can we unpack some of what you talked about? Because I agree with your point one and two, but I'm really struggling with number three. Okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah,
So
I
that
love that advice about like letting them know like this is something you take seriously and you practice it,
mhm,
um, so that they can actually reflect on it.
mhm.
Um,
But as the person who's I get kind of the receiver, I always tell
mhm.
people, come in and take notes. It is amazing how that helps you stay on track. And kind of you have something to go back to. Because it's hard to hear stuff when you're not expecting it, or it's not the scope of what you're expecting, and you're like, you feel like, the fire hose is right at you. But taking notes kind of keeps you grounded and centered.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that, Diane. So hopefully, I feel like there's a couple of nuggets that Diane just shared as far as like what you can do to help develop this skill. Because I think in general, even if you're not a manager, knowing how to have hard conversations is a very useful life skill. Because it's likely it will come up, even if it's like colleague to colleague instead. So yeah, thank you for lifting that up. So we have about 4 more minutes before we officially end. So I do want to, if anyone has any final questions for the Q&A, please go ahead and add them. I do want to throw out there just for fun, as we kind of wait to see if anyone does have any final thoughts, is what is your favorite moment on Ted Lasso? And sorry for spoilers, I guess, if no one's seen the show, but
Let's see what they pipe in. And Ted Lasso, that it is confirmed the next series will be out in 2026. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
okay, so I'm just looking. Feel free to put it in the chat. Okay, so
Be
the
a
goldfish
goldfish.
was mentioned. Yep, so we're just waiting for that delay. Be a goldfish, which is a great one. And then to kind of uplift what the first person said, like one of the favorite concepts is having the memory of a goldfish, being able to move on from mistakes and not letting it mess up the next play or the next move, is how it kind of came out.
Oh, the darts. There you
Darts.
go. Yep.
Yep. So yeah, so we're seeing a lot of fun within the chat. So love that. Because again, a lot of people really like the show. So and it's exciting that there's another one coming up. So before we officially close out, we do have one more question that came in the Q&A box that I do want to talk about.
Sure.
So, does vulnerability sometimes affect the leader reputation negatively? Which I think is a good thing to talk about because I do think there could be some stereotypes about being too vulnerable and like being in a position of power. So I don't know if you have any thoughts, Diane, on that question.
I always side with being vulnerable and being honest and being candid. That has always served me well. So because if people try to lie through something and misstep and only say this much of the truth, that usually comes back to bite you. So I would say I would kind of err on the side of being vulnerable, asking questions. If you guys aren't in agreement, circling back and saying, "How can we finish this conversation? We're both heated right now. Let's walk away. Let's come back and revisit this." Um, but being vulnerable to me helps you move forward the way you need to. And there's always going to be some conflicts, but if it's not resolved, it just gunny sacks and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden, one day you blow up and it's over something silly like a stapler, when it's really the core is a very different issue. So I'd rather see people deal with things up front.
Yeah, and honestly, it feels all like a almost like a tool for building trust with it.
Hmm.
Because if you're willing to be vulnerable, it kind of shows like you're showcasing how you want others to act as well, to be able to be open to know that like I got your back, you have my back, that kind of
Hmm.
situation. So yeah, I think I probably land in the same boat, Diane, of like it's more of a positive thing to be vulnerable as a leader than a negative thing. For sure. Okay, so we are right at time. So very excited about that. So again, Diane, thank you so much for speaking to our audience here today. And it seems like a lot of people had a lot of different favorites about Ted Lasso. So it's a fun topic to talk about different leadership styles and how you can really uplift a team and create and develop a team that does really good work together. So what I want to do right now actually is just talk about some upcoming events at Forte when we
There we go.
have like our different webinar series and things like that. So the first one just to mention is actually a virtual career fair we have on October 29th. So if you're interested, it's on our website as well. So we have some of our partner or member companies that are coming to that. They have hiring positions. So if you're interested, curious, it's going to be a really good day to make some networking conversations as well. Other things to mention is that our next business essential, which is a different type of workshop that we have, is coming up next month. So very excited, early November. So you can definitely check it out on our website as well. But we're talking about charitable giving as well, especially since it's going to be that time of the year. And it's featured our ALC, so it's our Alumni Leadership Council. So they're going to be leading that here for Forte. And then finally, the next Diane webinar, in case you're interested, for a career coach, is the big ask is going to be the topic for that. So, and that's coming up in November as well.
And
Uh,
that is not this. It's not the big here. It's the big ask, the big,
yes,
the
the
big
big
request.
question.
How do you make how do you make the big request? How do you make the big request? And I'm going to kind of break that down.
Yeah, and we are so excited for that one as well. So that pretty much concludes what we have for you here today. Again, thank you so much for attending. Really excited. Keep staying connected with Forte. We have a ton of resources on our website, and we hope to see you at a future event with us.
Very good. Thank you all.